This is episode 49 with Eric Pincus.
You have to find what you're good at, and so that's going to be unique to each individual. So if you're a student and you want to get into this industry, you need to find a way. What can you communicate in a way that resonates with others?
This is the Sports Business Classroom audio experience. If you recognize the voice, let me put a name with it. I'm Bo Estes, a host on NBA TV and an announcer on NBA.com. I'm one of the instructors at SBC. Welcome to the show. Now, breaking into the world of sports can seem daunting, but if you're looking for a leg up, you've come to the right place. Each week, we talk to top-notch figures all across the industry to bring you lessons and advice to learn from. Thanks for spending some time with us today, and let the experience begin. Landing a job in the NBA is no easy feat, no matter if it's as a player, front office exec, agent, or even in the league offices. But one surefire way to put yourself ahead of a competitive talent pool is an extensive knowledge of the collective bargaining agreement. And Larry Kuhn is undoubtedly, and I can't stress this enough, undoubtedly the leading expert on planet Earth on the subject, and he's been teaching the material to teams, agents, media, and students now for over 20 years. And for the first time ever, he has an online course containing all of his material available for purchase to the general public. CBA Mastery with Larry Kuhn is available on demand with no expiration, so you'll have access to this material whenever you need it. To learn more and enroll, please visit sportsbusinessclassroom.com today. Eric Pincus is the latest in our recent string of self-made stars in the business of basketball, and particularly basketball media. Now, I've known Eric from his appearances on NBA TV as the resident cap expert and from his invaluable work at the Sports Business Classroom. But Eric didn't start out as the star you see before you today. In fact, his dream of a career in media actually hit him at an NBA game. Between then and now, a mountain of hard work has funded his rise from a basketball outsider to a hoops insider. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Eric Pincus. All right, thanks so much, Eric Pincus, for joining us. I'm excited to see you, man, because I haven't seen you in such a long time. We're going to talk Draft Academy more a little bit later, but I at least want to touch on it right now. What is Draft Academy, and how are your preparations going?
Well, the preparations are great. We are going to deliver a tremendous program. It is an extension of what we've done for years in Las Vegas at Summer League as Sports Business Classroom. And obviously we're living in a different world, a virtual world.
Yeah.
And so it's a virtual version of that. And what you're going to do is you're going to learn from everybody in the industry, from people with teams, from agents, people who understand and love the game, love the industry, and who want to share and teach you how to be a professional in this league, whether it's whatever aspect of it that you love or that you want to get into. We've got some great people who are generous with their time and have lived that life and want to make sure that you understand and grow and get opportunities in it as well. It's something that is a labor of love. It'll be a virtual platform. It's something that is interactive. It's not like a webinar where you're just sitting there watching a video, which is great. Like, you can learn a lot from watching YouTube and things like that. But it's something that you actually participate in. You team up with other students. You're getting time with these executives one-on-one, or whatever they are, executives, agents, people in the industry. You're getting individual time. And so you get to really express yourself, get yourself noticed, learn, and have a lot of fun. And I can't endorse it enough.
Eric, I'm wondering if early on in your career, I think you had an advantage in that you're, say, 30. So you're a little more mature. You've dealt in a professional setting before. So you know what that sort of give and take of respect is like. So I do feel like that is an advantage. At that time, did you find yourself looking at reporters and writers that you liked and saying, I'm going to watch what that person does a little bit just so I know sort of the rules of the game? Did you do any of that as well?
Yeah, 100. And so I remember, like, I forget, I guess I was still living at home with my folks when I
Yeah.
was young enough that I had seen a show that was, I don't even remember, what channel, but it covered the Clippers. It was like a reality show kind of before it was called reality shows, where they followed around uh, some players, they followed around some diehard fans, they followed around some coaches. A lot of what you see in modern shows now that we kind of take for granted, but this was kind of pioneering at the time. And they also followed around Art Thompson III, who wrote for the Orange County Register. He's since moved on to other lines of work, and we still keep in touch. And he's really a great guy, and I have a lot of love for him. So, but I was like, that was kind of what crystallized. Like, I didn't know that job existed, and so when I got there and I'm finally in the building, Art Thompson is there, and I'm following him around. And that first year, I didn't assert myself much at all. I didn't say a lot. I wasn't necessarily myself as far as, I was a more reserved version of myself because
Your full personality wasn't there.
right, because I didn't know how it worked. And it's very easy to make a bad first impression because you overstep your bounds and you just don't know. Like, there's you have to humble yourself and understand like what you don't know, and then you never know what you don't know to a full extent. But I knew going in that I was in a new environment and I didn't know how it worked, but I know it works. There's always politics. There's always a kind of a, whatever the system. There's a way that it works that you have to work within, and you can change the system a little bit, maybe around the margins, but you can't when you first get there. Like, you need to see, how does it work? And so I followed Art around. I don't even know if Art knew that I was following him around. And at some point, I started to ask questions and I started to get more comfortable. And by the second year, now I have a better feel for it. You've gone through, similar to, like, it's not that different than being a player and being a rookie and going through that first year and just not knowing what a year means in the NBA and what does the cycle of a year look like? What is the draft? What is free agency? How does, what's summer league? How does all that work? What can guys talk about? What can't they? What do they want? What do players like to talk about? When are they more open? Like, I learned when we started to go to video, I learned, like, I could get guys to talk on camera on video, but I couldn't get them to say the kind of things I can get them to say just chatting. And
that's
I
true.
could get them to say a lot more just chatting than holding a recorder in their face. So if I'm just chatting with you, I'm just chatting with you. If I'm recording, I'll get something different. If I'm videoing, I get something else altogether. And
it's levels of guardedness, right?
Yeah, 100%. And you just learn, and it's different for different people. Not every player is the same. Everyone has it. There's young guys who come in who are not very mature and need to learn it, just like I was at that. Maybe I was a little more mature based on where I came in, but a lot of, I still had to learn, and a lot of guys are in that learning phase where they don't know what to say, what to do. I remember, like, meeting Sean Livingston at media day, and he was so sweet and just was sharing anything and talking. And Katino Mobley came over and he's like, "Rookie, shut up, man. You don't need to say all this stuff. Like, you got to learn how this works. You don't
so he had to learn the ropes too.
I like that. I actually, Katino Mobley, I saw, we kept in touch after he stopped playing, just randomly. We had visiting the same places with our kids at the same time. So
Gotcha.
We ended up building up a little friendship. It's been a minute since I've seen him. He is more gray than I do.
You lucky dog, you.
Yeah. Anyway, I will say that, to kind of go back to Art, like, we ended up working, I ended up feeling eventually like a colleague of someone like that, but it just didn't happen like that. It took a lot of learning and time to get to that point. And I think you just have to, as someone if you're trying to get into this industry, just understand that it's a journey. It's not like you walk in and you're immediately going to come in as like Adrian Wojnarowski. You're going to come in and have to learn and have to grow with it. And I was able to grow in a certain direction. I found what worked for me, and my expertise became the salary cap and all of that. But it just started just being, a young guy, even though I was a little bit older, trying to learn how this thing worked and walk through it.
I think it's interesting you talk about modeling as one of the things that you can sort of learn along the way when you're new in the job. The other thing, I don't know if you have any other tips. One of the things I remember being in the locker room was that if you're in a locker room with Shaq and Kobe and Karl Malone, maybe there's a rookie with a good story. Maybe there's somebody else without 30 microphones around him with a good story that will be more welcoming and open to you coming up and talking to and having more of an extended conversation. Do you have any other ideas and advice like that?
Oh, so I, it's, it was more of a necessity. Like no one really, it wasn't just John Black and the Lakers who didn't really like, what are you? Because they didn't understand the internet yet. But imagine the people working for the papers who hadn't fully digested what the internet, which completely
Sure.
changed jobs, and not necessarily for the better in a lot of cases. You know, it was a
Yeah.
very stressful time for the papers. They lost a lot of money, and having worked both sides of it, having worked for the LA Times, I have maybe a broader sense of that. But it took some time to find where I could fit in, and like I could go talk to, media day would be crazy. There'd be like a mountain of people around Kobe and all these guys. And then there'd be some rookie who'd be, or just a role player who'd just happy for the attention, happy to talk. And by the way, sometimes these rookies and role players evolve into really good players.
Yes. And you develop a relationship that way.
Exactly. And that's huge because it really is a relationship business. And if you can build up a trust early, like I find the first time you meet someone, they don't really even know, like it doesn't really take. I'm not huge on worrying about that first impression. My first impression is more just like, hi, I exist. I'm not an idiot. That's the main goal. Right?
Very basic.
Don't hate me. Don't think I'm a complete moron. I'm not going to come in and but like I had a friend of mine who's another reporter, like trying to get around the little scrum. Kevin Garnett is sitting, with an ice bucket in front of in the visiting locker room. And my friend's trying to get around to get a better spot, and he literally slips and falls onto KG's lap. And it was adorable. Like it was just KG was so cool about it.
He was. That's great. That's good to hear.
He was. And because he's such a big man and my friend's kind of small, so it was like a kid sitting on a grown-up's lap. And look, that's some of it. Like even to this day, like when you talk to someone who's 7 feet tall and or even 6'6" or whatever, and you're holding a mic up, there's a feeling like you're talking to an adult. You can't, even though they could be a 20-year-old kid and I could be twice or more their age, there is some of that. But besides that, just talking to people, my general philosophy is just be friendly, but don't be over pushy. There are times in the job where you have to be pushy and you have to fight for your space. So for instance, in a press conference, you can't just sit there and be like, hey, I'd like to ask a question, right? Because you're not. So there's a point where you have to like jump ahead of other reporters and get your question out and yell them out and assert your voice. So I'm not going to say go in there and be meek. But there's also a point where you don't want to overstep and invade someone's privacy to the point where they're turned off. And there's chasing stories, and then there's building relationships. There's breaking news and longevity. Guys like Woj and Shams Charania and other guys who have, been newsbreakers over their careers. David Aldridge and Mark Stein, and I'm leaving out 100 guys. Guys who are and females who are just like elite at what they do. I have great respect for what they're able to do to be able to break news and maintain relationships, because that's not an easy balance. I do break a certain amount of news, but it's more on the financial side and the contract side. And my goal isn't to be first with signings, but maybe the first to explain what it actually is and what it means. But to kind of get back to your question of like, there are all these little ways of just being a good person, being friendly.
It really does come down to that, Eric. It really does. Like, there's no rule. I can't hand you a rule book and say, follow X, Y, Z and do that. There's a feel to it, right?
The antagonist believes that they're the protagonist in a well-written story. There's an argument to be made that Thanos is the protagonist of Infinity War, right? Like you can argue that whether you agree or not.
Yep.
There's a compelling case, and so you have to understand, like, everybody has their own point of view. You can't go in there and just the world doesn't revolve around me. If I'm going in there, I need to see who it revolves around in their own way and try to fit in there, be kind to people. And some people aren't going to respond to that. Some people are. And I try to say yes to things more than no. So I'll do radio interviews sometimes with students or small podcasts, or answer emails, or answer as many questions as I can on Twitter, at Eric Pincus, as possible. When things are really going down and there's breaking news, I can't keep up with the flood of questions and replies.
Yep.
But after like a normal day, there's time to like look through and see, who's asking questions and try to answer. It keeps me in touch with like the reader base, the viewership, and what kind of questions they have in their mind, and to keep me focused on what's, what are people interested in? Like when Kobe tore his Achilles, I was there and I got, I asked him, and that was a tough question, but I could feel the entire world wondering, like, is this the last time we've seen Kobe Bryant play basketball? And I had to ask him that. And he did not like that question, but I had to ask it, so there's a point where it's like,
you have a relationship with Kobe at this point. He knows who you are. Yeah.
I don't know if it helped in that moment because he was pretty
emotional in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, he had been clearly crying and his eyes are, but I did talk to him later about it. And, I asked if he wanted to kick my, my rear, after I asked that question. He said, like, it was the right question. It was what needed to be asked. And
it's cool that he recognized that.
Right. Well, it is in some ways an adversarial relationship at times, media and player, and sometimes it's a collaborative relationship. And I try to be as collaborative as possible. I'm not a gotcha guy. I'm not trying to expose whatever, but at the same time, I'm also going to have to write what I need to write and do my stories. And there are times you have to ask difficult questions, and it is literally my job to do so. So I would not be living up. If I'm working for the LA Times, I'm working for Bleacher Report, and if I'm not doing my job, then I don't deserve that job. Just like if you're a player and you're not showing up for practice, you're not working hard and not doing what you need to do to be a great basketball player, then you're not doing your job, right? And some players get that to a degree, some not at all. And it's very few players I've had a problem with, by and large. And if there's been a problem, it's never been like a significant one. And some of them, just like any relationship, some players I don't click with. I would say 90-something% I do. And it's just from a mutual respect. I feel like players recognize that I respect them back, and I'm not treating them in any kind of way that is disrespectful. Even when I'm asking at times a difficult question, asking a player, why didn't you drive instead of pulling up for a shot? Like you had a lane, simple things like that. Or, my career is veered to a more of a, less of a game side and more of a, global contracts side. But I spent a lot of years in those, I don't want to say trenches, but in the locker rooms, in the mass of sweaty, stinky, from the media.
Been there.
It's not the players; it's the being smushed into big giant mass of media scrum. But all treasured memories too. So I don't look back.
It is a bit of a media mosh pit in there. I'm wondering, you mentioned Kobe Bryant. It's been a little over a year since he passed. You're Southern California based. We all feel it. But can you give us a sense in Southern California what the loss of that massive figure has been like over the past year?
Because
it feels especially painful there, I imagine.
Yeah, it is. It is. So like Kobe, like there was Shaq and Kobe, right? But Shaq left, right?
Yep.
And so when Kobe first got here, there was probably a division among Laker fans, just like there was a division between Shaq and Kobe over whose team it was, etc.
Yep.
but over time, I think Kobe won over probably just about everyone in the Laker fandom, right?
Yep.
Obviously, if you're not a Laker fan, not the case. But from having watched him come up as a kid, 18-year-old drafted player, all the way to 20 years, and to go out with scoring 60 points and all the things he did and winning titles, going through some challenges in life, not all of which he was successful at. He certainly made his mistakes and was human, but his dedication to his family and his daughters, of which I specifically relate to. I have 3 daughters.
Yeah.
We had that in common. I knew him not as well as others, better than a lot. I mean, better than a lot as far as fans, people who hadn't met him.
For sure.
But certainly there were others who were closer to him, and it wasn't like we didn't have an outside of the business relationship. We didn't have a text or a call relationship, but when we see each other, we would talk, and we had a good relationship. I think it's really that watching him grow up and seeing a life in full, which is really what we got, unfortunately cut short, meant so much because it's I think people, it was like he was either your brother or your child, or like it wasn't like just an athlete. You saw a kid grow up and go from being a young punk, which he would understand
Yep.
is what he was when he came in, and to being this revered figure in basketball by other players as like the godfather, and supporting the women's game, supporting his daughters, and then winning an Oscar, and overcoming things that overcoming failures, overcoming an imperfect world, of which he was an imperfect person. It just meant so much to LA, and LA is diehard Lakers, and there's a small contingent that's Clipper fans, but I mean it's a Laker nation, Laker City, and the way it went down was shocking, and him losing his daughter was
Yeah.
hard to cope with. It was true grieving. I've never experienced that level of communal grieving, other than I remember being a kid when John Lennon was shot.
Oh, okay.
That's the closest, but I was a kid then. I was really young.
Yeah.
So I don't remember it on the same level. I'm sure we could find some. I know Princess Diana probably for others. That wasn't something I was as connected with. So I know that a lot of people have that kind of connection there. And I'm sure we could find a few others that are similar, but in LA, that was just, I mean, it was mass grieving at Staples Center. It was for like a week or whatever.
Yeah.
It was murals everywhere. It's still a lot to deal with. My wife and I actually had a friend who had tickets to the memorial, and I had been scheduled to be there as media. But my friend gave me 2 tickets to a suite, so I took my wife, and instead of being there in a professional capacity, I actually was there to experience that, with my partner in life. And someone
Was it really emotional? Was it what was that like?
It was, yeah, it was, yeah. It was like going to the memorial of your family member. It really was. And
Wow.
we've all experienced that on some level. I've been, knock on wood, I've been fortunate as far as my family. I've lost grandparents and an uncle and certain members who are close to me. And on my wife's side, we lost her mom, and we lost her niece, and so we've had those experiences that are just heart wrenching. And this was on par with that. And I knew him, so at least, but my wife, I don't think she ever met Kobe, and yet for her, this was right on that. It was she still has moments where she's just will say, I can't believe he's gone, and that's still, it's still there. And it's not like last year was like we had this great year to kind of lift us up past that. It was a hell of a year.
Yeah.
Laker fans are happy that they got the championship, and it was poetic in a way. that the Lakers were able to win. Obviously, not poetic for 29 other teams, but for the Lakers. And I think there are some teams who, at least those who weren't in contention, have appreciation for the Lakers winning this year. I think there are teams who are happy that I know Boston's not happy that the Lakers won. I know the Miami's not happy. I'm sure the Clippers aren't happy and other teams, but there are some teams, and at least some executives I've spoken to, who have some appreciation for what this meant
to that franchise city, right?
To the city, to the NBA, to the world. I mean, it was he was a polarizing figure in some ways, but by the time he finished his career, I think he had reached a status that very few players ever get to. And you could put him in your top 10, you could put him in your top 5 of all time. You can argue number 1. I don't know if that would be a widespread argument that everyone would agree to. I know there's, I would say some would go for it. I think he reached tremendous heights, and he has a beautiful family. I have great respect for his wife. I don't know her well, but I've met Vanessa, probably had like 10 conversations with her, mostly about commonalities of having multiple daughters. And seeing her strength is really remarkable to see, how she's handled, as in public, a very, I don't know, imaginable circumstance.
Yeah.
Do you love the game of basketball? Do you ever wonder what goes on in those moments leading up to making a selection in the NBA draft or at the trade deadline? If so, let us take you there. The Sports Business Classroom Draft Academy will take place March 15th through the 19th and provide attendees with an immersive experience like no other. This virtual event will bring together some of the top professionals and decision makers in sports and place attendees in the same scenarios executives face in pressure situations. Courses and event exercises will focus on free agency, the draft, trade deadline, player evaluation, salary cap, and much, much more. So here's your chance to prove you have what it takes. Invest in your future and sign up right now. Register at sportsbusinessclassroom.com.
Getting us back to the subject of Sports Business Classroom and Draft Academy, and those of us with so much passion for the sport, tell me, if you've been to Sports Business Classroom, or those that know what Sports Business Classroom is about, what makes this Draft Academy experience a unique experience? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, I mean, it's going to be different in the sense that obviously it's not in person, right? So the last Sports Business Academy or Sports Business Classroom was done virtually.
Yep.
And so that was something that was tremendous success. But what's nice is we've also grown from that and have more experience in a virtual environment. So there are opportunities to meet one-on-one, get ask me anythings, but done video style. It's a little bit more focused this time on the draft itself.
Yep.
Normally we spend a little bit more time on in Sports Business Classroom on CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, and analytics and scouting and
media,
et cetera. Here, it's a little bit more about the draft process itself, and we've always covered it in each year. So it's not like it's an area that wasn't touched, but I think we just go more in depth, and it's nice because it teaches you scouting, because the draft itself that's what scouting is primarily the focus of. I mean, there's NBA scouting and there's scouting for games, like preparing for a game, advanced scouting, and then there's scouting like pro personnel scouting, which is going and getting other when you want to go to free agency or trades. But the heart of scouting in this industry is looking at college players, understanding how to rank them, how to build a big board. And it's not my expertise at all. So I'm really excited myself, because I always want to learn more about what I don't know. And so like, how do you identify like Taylor Horton Tucker's on the Lakers, and I cover him up close. He's in his second year, came in as an 18-year-old kid, one of the youngest guys still in the NBA. He's, I think, 20 now, but came in overweight in college. In college, he was playing overweight. He had some personal issues that he was dealing with, and it was confusing what position he would play in the NBA. And yet, if you go by the history of the Lakers in the last 6-7 years, you'll find that there's been the success of like Larry Nance, like Kyle Kuzma late in the first. They've done well with Jordan Clarkson. They bought the pick for Jordan Clarkson. He's probably sixth man of the year. Their picks, Julius Randle, an all-star this year. D'Angelo Russell, all-star in previous years. Brandon Ingram last year, an all-star. TBD, Lonzo Ball, still a very, talk about polarizing players, but he's been playing really, really well the last 4 weeks or so.
Yeah.
So how, and I'm just using them as an example because I'm close to the situation in my coverage to say, like, why are they where they are? How do they see what others don't see? How do they get a Taylor Horton Tucker, who's one of the best second-year players in the league? And his points per game isn't quite there, but if you watch him play, you're like, you see this guy is valuable piece. And it's easy to say, oh, he's on Clutch Sports, he's on Rich Paul, his LeBron's brand. But from my intel, like, yes, but he was really high on. He was a first round pick on their board. He was in their top 30, and they got him in the second round. So
see, that's fascinating to me to know that information, that piece of information. Okay, he's to some teams, he's a certain first round pick. And these students will be going through that process in building their own personal opinions along with help from professionals, high-level people that have been in organizations, right?
So how do you translate what they're doing? And then how do you look at other teams? And look, I'm going to use the Knicks as an example, but they are turning the corner.
Yeah,
so I'm not picking on the Knicks. But they, over the same time period, drafted a lot of guys like Frank Ntilikina and Kevin Knox, and they did hit it big with Kristaps Porzingis, but then they ended up trading him, and so like it didn't work out. So like, where is what were they missing? And they've since gone through different leadership and are clearly turning the corner. So I'm happy for the New York success. Certainly happy for Julius's success. What is it that they're doing differently than what the Lakers? And I don't think our class is going to teach you that specific because the Lakers aren't going to be there to represent themselves, and the Knicks aren't going to. I mean, there might be. But they can only share so. Even if we have people from those teams, they can only share so much. You're only going to get so much work product from the principals. But what techniques are missing from maybe one? What teams are successful at it? What do those successful teams do? And what's nice is that we have executives or former executives, because there's a lot of personnel, movement. One guy gets fired, the top boss gets fired, and that usually means that some of his staff is in the wind for a minute and between jobs, and then they get picked up. For instance, we've had Wes Wilcox lead this part of the program for us before. He can no longer do that because he's a little busy right now, right? Right. So I don't know what's been announced or if Wes is participating. So like I said, I'm not going to make any announcements. I'm like the Marvel universe. I'm not going to like leak any spoilers.
No spoilers.
Right. I'm not going to give away anything and getting fined or fired because I gave it on. I don't think it's that deep. But like Wes was the GM of the Hawks and was able to break down his success and failures because he could talk openly about what he liked about what he did, what did he learn from his mistakes, and then now he's with the Kings. And so now we'll have others who were in a similar position as Wes, who are in between spaces, but who have years of highly functional success and in important roles, teaching students what their process was. And we're not just going to give you one, we're going to give you multiple points of view. And it's not just someone with a team. It's going to be like, what's the agent side of that? Like, how do you get your play? First of all, how do you identify players to represent, right? How do you identify the talent? Because obviously if you're an agent, you don't want just represent a guy who doesn't get drafted and doesn't sign with a team and goes. I mean, there are agents who represent guys overseas. That's very valuable. But we're talking in the NBA sphere. How do you get guys who are gonna be drafted? How do you get them higher on the draft board? What do the game? An example would be Emmanuel Mudiay, right, or Dante Exum from that draft. Like Exum didn't work out with anybody. That was actually Rob Pelinka was his agent at the time. He was this mystery guy who didn't have a lot of exposure as far as actual film, but had great measurables and shot really high up in that draft because of how they didn't do things. They didn't, right? Like he wasn't put into.
He wasn't exposed.
They rode the wave that was existing, a hype wave. How did they create that? Moudier's agent had a different approach, but he played in China, right? So like, how do you make that decision that that's best for your client? And then there's agents representing guy. How do you get your guy in the top 10? How do you get him in the lottery? How do you just make, is it better to get your guy drafted at 20, at 55? Is it better to have them not drafted and sign a two-way or a trade? All these kind of factors. So you're not just going to get the team side of it. You're going to get also the agent side of the coin as well. And it's just a fascinating puzzle because you have all these actors, right? You have 30 teams. You have, a pool of only 60 players who are going to be drafted, but maybe 200 players who are in that class. There's probably more, but there is more. But like, let's say there's 200 players who are either going to sign summer league deals, two ways, training camp deals. They're going to get drafted, and then all of the other aspects of representing just everything that goes into it. It's a fascinating puzzle, and it's a significant part of a franchise's budget goes into that. Their whole scouting departments, that's the core of what they're trying to accomplish, is figure out the draft. And you can find a guy who, Alex Caruso, right? Like he started game 7, or not game 7. The final game was a game 6, whatever, of the NBA finals, and changed that game, right? Like the Lakers went small, put in Alex Caruso, who wasn't drafted, played in the G League for the Oklahoma City Blue, and then the Lakers G League program brought him over because those G League level scouts, Joey Buss in this particular case, and Nick Mazzella, who run their G League program, they found Alex Caruso, and that's how that ended up working. They convinced the Lakers to sign him to a two-way. This is the kind of stuff we're going to be going over. And like I said, I hope you could tell by my excitement. I can't wait for it.
Well, it's interesting because what you just mentioned, I think, is an important thing. A scout found a guy in the G League who started in the decisive game for an NBA championship winning team. Right. Think about that right there. That's a fascinating piece of information. What I would go on to say is, just in my observation, because I'm obviously more on the media side at SBC, in watching something like what Wes did and what you guys are putting together, there were moments where these students were interacting with a guy like Wes, and they would do stuff that would really impress Wes, and you would see those moments where Wes was like, now that's something I haven't thought of. And all these students have a chance to put that sort of foot forward, to have that opportunity in interacting with these people. You don't get that chance in many other places.
No, I've been through other programs and participated in them, and a lot of it is listening, which is great, but it's not any different than watching like a YouTube video. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, I'm doing YouTube content and I love doing it. But there's something about the interaction that's great. Like, for instance, Makar Gavorkian, one of our students, in virtual one in August, reached out to me and we talked, and he needed a little bit of boning up on certain CBA things. So we actually got together and we met virtually or on the phone and virtually, we set up a Google. I do some tutoring. So we did like a Google Doc, and we went through all the detail. We went through Larry Kuhn's FAQ.
Sure.
And now he's with the Nets as an operations, in the basketball operator. And that's I contribute I know I contributed to that. Now, did I contribute 1%, 5%? I don't know what percent I contributed, but maybe it's higher. But knowing that I contributed means the world to me. And I think that's kind of the heart of the program is that we really want to like feed NBA teams, agents, like Amber Nichols running the G League, the Capologist. She was a great student at SPC, and she's earned that role because she's awesome, right? There's a lot of awesome people out there, and it's getting that opportunity to show your individual brilliance or whatever it is that you have to offer. That's the challenge, is how do you get that, what you have, in front of somebody else so they can identify it and recognize it. And that's not easy, because there's a ton of people and a lot of people have talent, and it's, the league is definitely, there's a certain amount of nepotism and cronyism that feeds into opportunity. And right or wrong, that's, I don't have the same last name as certain, executives through the history of the NBA who have, their sons have gotten jobs, etc. Friendship and relationships are a massive part of how people get jobs. And we're not necessarily, we're touching on that a little bit. It's not, but but via merit. We're just giving our students an opportunity to have one-on-ones with some of these folk, to present their ideas, to present in front. And Kalita Taylor was one of my favorite students. And she came in she ended up going on to the NBA TV show GM School and won that. Spoiler alert. But Kalita, I remember meeting her at our opening cocktail, whatever it is. In Vegas, the normal opening night is we have some opening stuff, and then we have a little cocktail reception. I don't think there's any alcohol or anything, but just a hangout. And she had heard something that I wasn't sure on my podcast, or maybe it was an interview. And I said, I'm not sure on that one. I'll have to look it up. And this was something I had done the day before. I hadn't even had time to look up some quirk of the rule. And she came in with a detailed explanation of what the answer was. And I'm immediately I noticed her. And then she was also great in the class, and she put herself out there and has had great success. And I'm confident that she'll end up with a team, or whatever it is that her goals are. It's that kind of opportunity. And obviously we don't have this in-person opportunity, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because in-person is fleeting. You know what I mean? Yes, you get a better sense of the person in 3D, but after is a virtual relationship for most of us, where it's going to have to be through email, through text, through some other various, forms of communication, instead of in person. And that's where we're going to have to connect virtually and interactively. And so those relationships may have a better chance of carrying forward, because we're setting that up in that kind of context anyway.
Let me jump on top of something you've been pointing out here about this. And we talk about it being a relationship business. Albert Hall says it all the time. This is a relationship business. I think what students should understand too is that not only are you building relationships with instructors and people that work with teams, people like you and me and stuff like that, you're also building relationships with your fellow students. And let me promise you, those students are going to climb the ladder, and they're going to have developed friendships with you. And if you've impressed them and they've impressed you, you'll have opportunities that grow from that. Because look, I came in as an intern at Turner Sports with some people. One of my friends is right along with me. He's the producer of Inside the NBA now. Another guy is the senior vice president of the company. This will happen with you as well in an experience like this. I promise it. Another thing that I want you to touch on, this is some of the things that you come away with from this course. A video of you presenting a trade within NBA regulations, which may be watched live by team or league personnel. 2 NBA caliber scouting reports filled out by you. Your own profile on VSL Talent, our proprietary LinkedIn talent portal that is used by team and league executives to search out new talent, and a network of peers. And this is what I was talking about, a network of peers and basketball professionals that will serve you. So I think it's a lot that you get into, and access and engagement opportunities within our new website, notradeclause.com, that was created by SBC students. So there's a lot of things you come away with out of this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few things to touch on there. So, there's different levels of jobs, and a lot of the students are coming in for, like, you're starting at the beginning, right? Like, how do you get noticed? Well, this is one of those ways where we, as a program, Sports Business Classroom, I've lost track. This is maybe my 5th year involved with it, 4th year. I'd have to look at the calendar and try to remember, but we've established ourselves from the work we do and from the success that we've had with our students, that teams, when they see a resume and they see, oh, they took the Sports Business Classroom, they're like, okay, that's something. Now you've already immediately got, like, okay, you're going to get noticed a little bit more, because I think teams respect and understand the program. And we get so many of them to participate in some form or another that they've been there. They've seen it. We've had Mark Cuban speak. We've had Adam Silver speak. We've had Neil Olshey, Tommy Shepard. I could go on we have everybody in the industry has spoken. Everybody's participated in, Daryl Morey. The list is ridiculous. And so because they participated, if they're looking for somebody and they've seen somebody go through this program, it's just another level of vetting that, like, we don't let just everybody into Sports Business Classroom. That's something that we've always prided in.
Yep.
We've kept our numbers low artificially to make sure that everybody's getting the full experience. So it's not like we're going for 200-300 people. We'd rather keep it lower so that it's not diluted. And so there's a vetting process there. And then because of that, everybody who's in it to a degree should be a good candidate. They've been vetted. I would say that, from my experience, most of the students are, like, really dedicated, high quality, want to learn, and they're working together. Like, because for an example, I've always in person, I've always been a mentor for the team. So, like, in our trade deadline, it would be more of a free agency thing or a trade deadline thing. I would represent a team, and so my team would be 4 or 5 people, and it's varied year to year. But I've kept in touch with some of those people, and we worked so well together because my teams always fleece everybody else's teams. My team, we get the Kyrie Irving, Isaiah Thomas trade done months before the Celtics, and then then we tell Mike Zarin, who was who's the assistant GM and general counsel of the Celtics, who was speaking at our closing ceremony that year. Actually, he's done it every time, as far as I know, in person. We shared with him what we did, and they did something similar but different. I don't think they got the idea from us. But that said, like, we're really we're a resource. You become a resource, and I think the NBA recognizes that, and you keep in touch with your colleagues. You work with your colleagues. I know some of them have gone into business together and worked projects together.
Yep.
They've done podcasts. They've done different websites, and they bring each other along. If you get a job with a team and that team needs somebody, who do you think that, if you have a name you're going to refer, it's going to be somebody that you've worked with, that you trust, that you have war room experience on. And it may not be real war room as far as for an NBA team, but like Bobby Marks with ESPN, who's formerly with the Nets, has said, like, he wishes like the real NBA was like this, because it's like, it's there's the way that we operate. It's a blast, and it's efficient, and put everybody in a room, have us at tables, put all 30 teams at tables, make them work it out the trade deadline the way that we do it, and maybe you'd have a more efficient NBA.
That would be fascinating, man. That would be really fascinating. Well, my big thing is this is your chance to make an impression. And Eric, thank you for spending some time with us and making an impression with us. I know you've got to get back to work. You got to build out this program, man. But thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this big thing that's coming from SBC, this Draft Academy. We're excited about it.
Yeah, no, sign up. It is It is truly a joy, and I think you'll find that you'll get a lot out of it, and you'll make new contacts and new friends, and grow from it in a way that maybe you didn't even anticipate that you would. So I can't endorse it enough, not because I'm a part of it, but really because I truly love it.
That's right. It's sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Go to the website. You can sign up there. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at SportsBizClass, and you can learn everything right there. So again, we look forward to seeing you at the Draft Academy virtual session. We look forward to seeing you there too, Eric. So thanks so much for joining us, bud.
All right. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Eric Pincus, and thank you to our growing numbers of followers who are enjoying our show. Believe us, we see that. And remember, if you liked the Sports Business Classroom audio experience, give us a rating, like the show, and please subscribe. Also, if you want to reach out directly, maybe you have a comment, a question, maybe you want to suggest a guest, whatever, I'm active on Twitter at NBA Bo. That's NBA BEAU. And you can also get in touch with us through the Sports Business Classroom's Twitter handle. That's at Sports Biz Class. That's Sports BIZ Class. Thanks so much for listening.